Hey, this is Chris, keeping it real, facts over fear. Your weekending update, Friday, August 28th, 2020. Looking at this graph, new reported COVID-19 cases, deaths in North Carolina. So we'll go to the cases first. We've had some fallout, of course, from all of the university students coming back to school, starting in, pretty much the last week of July, but I know that classes started at UNC on August 10th. So if we look back to, let's look at August 10th. The rolling average was 1473. At the time, I wasn't sure what would happen with all of these young adults coming back to school, and what would happen as we, in the case of North Carolina, moved 300,000 people from one location to another, basically. So what would be the effect of that? And so we see that at first it didn't have a whole lot of effect, but as the UNC dashboard, and I'm not going to look at the UNC dashboard because they've had many confirmed cases of COVID-19, and so I take their result as being typical of most universities across the state. We had a pretty good downward trend for about a week, and then all of these, and that's what you would expect, right? Because it takes about 5 days for someone who's been exposed to test positive for the virus. So in other words, it's 5 days from the time you're exposed to the time you feel bad enough that you go get tested. And so this pretty much lines up with that reality. And so now we have seen the fallout from that, and I cannot see any other reason why the numbers for the whole state would go up by such a number other than the fact that these university students were back intermingling, doing what college students do, whatever it is they do these days. And so we have reached a peak rolling average as of yesterday of 1596, and we can see that some of these reporting totals, we do not pay attention to daily reporting totals. We pay attention to the 7-day rolling average curve. That's what's important because it shows the trends of what's going on. So the only question in my mind was, has COVID-19 really gone through the population enough that this downward trend that started on, July 18th, is that downward trend simply because of things like wearing masks, or is it because enough people have been exposed now that there's just not enough fuel to add to the fire of this virus? And if this last 7-day rolling average is accurate, I would say the latter, that the virus is simply having too hard a time jumping to new hosts, that we have stirred the pot, so to speak, in the university systems. In university, like the UNC system particularly, but any college or university in North Carolina, we've stirred the pot. How many more people can be exposed? How many people are going to test positive? And so I think that we have seen this is the maximum. So in other words, what I'm really saying is this whole set of data from August 17th to now is pretty much an outlier, because it was a totally kind of unnatural progression in how this virus was progressing, because it wasn't based on like normal life where people were careful and people are doing what they should. This was, if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would say somebody was trying to jack up the numbers by doing all this. Not by falsifying data, but by like, hey, let's get a bunch of people together that don't normally get together and see what happens, which is exactly what happens when you go to the university. So, the question really then becomes, well, WRAL wants to trumpet the number of confirmed cases now because they're looking for some way to be hyperbolic. They're trying to find a way to be hysterical about this in order to, well, sell their service. I mean, anybody who thinks that anyone at WRAL is a serious journalist, you really need to have your head examined. So let's look at the stat that's really important. Let's look at new deaths. So let's look at and see how, and remember this, here's how this trend is going. Let's see how the deaths are going, and they have been going down since, what was August 10th? Let's look at August 10th. 27 new deaths per day, down to a 23 new deaths per day rolling average. So the number of people infected has had no effect at all on the number of people who have died. And I'm not minimizing, of course, people who have died, but I'm just saying this is what this was always supposed to be about. And everyone's lost sight of that. The statistics speak for themselves. If you got any questions or comments, leave them in the section below. Like and subscribe. We appreciate when you do. If you have any honest questions, we'd really love to hear them. We will see you on the next video.